I'm tiny.
Sorry.
Hello. Thank you for coming. So I'm Dave Dempsall, club captain currently, just about. And just wanted to first of all say thank you very much for coming, and it's brilliant to see so many people back at the club. It's been quite a while, and yeah, we've kind of been looking forward to this day. It's an opportunity to get everyone down and start looking forward to getting back to sort of normal, getting back to rowing, and the club being open to all of its members, and that's what today's all about. And we're celebrating some of our members who've helped us to be where we are today. We've got a great fleet of boats, 8 boats to christen today. It's a bit more than we'd normally have, but yeah, it just shows as well that we're trying to keep putting new boats in the boathouse, providing for juniors, masters, seniors, yeah, across all levels of the club. These boats will be used, and I think when you hear about the people that have helped today, you'll see how many different parts of the club, and yeah, they're all supported by our members, our volunteers, and who've done all the work that's led us to get here. So I'm going to hand over to Dave Johnson here to talk first of all about, this is our new our top junior boys quad, which we'll be racing this week, coming weekend at the Henley qualifiers, hopefully at Henley Regatta, and David's going to let you know who it's named after and why it's such a fitting tribute. So David, over to you.
It's my pleasure to introduce the naming of the David Swain. David would have been honoured but humbled having a boat named after him. He spent most of his life on this river, firstly as a rower and a coach at Bedford School. Then in the early 2000s he joined Star Club as a junior coach. This gave him so much pleasure in life. But after several years, he decided that his time was up and he was going to retire. So he retired. That lasted 2 months, and he was back on the riverbank coaching beginner juniors. Again, I think this was about 2 years worth of work, and then he decided again it was time to retire, as his wife, Pamela, was retiring at the same time from her working life. Then Pamela announced, I'm taking up rowing. So he was back at the riverbank, coaching his wife. That went really well.
My David would be absolutely delighted to have a boat named after him. And he wouldn't quite know what to say. No, that's not quite true. Because if I ever lost David at an event, I could always know that he'd be chatting to someone, but not then he'd be chatting to someone else and someone else. But he did really enjoy coaching, and there was a group of girls that were his joy, I think, with all the success they had. So it would give me great pleasure to actually unveil this. I named this boat David Swain. Thank you.
To David Swain.
Thanks, David.
Oh, good morning, everyone. It's my privilege to introduce one of the club's legends. He came here in the 1970s for professional reasons, having had a distinguished rowing career with Bolton Rowing Club. But it is to our eternal benefit that he chose to join this club rather than any other club in the vicinity. As an oarsman, he rowed as a senior, a veteran as we then called it, and in his later years he rowed in the Gentleman's Four on a Wednesday morning. But arguably, his contribution to the club was greater off the water than it was on. He was a president of the club and much respected for that. He was a British rowing umpire, and for many years, for decades in fact, a director of Star Club Bedford Limited, the company that owns the lease for this wonderful boathouse. In fact, Mike was one of the prime movers in having this boathouse constructed. But as a director of Star Club Bedford, he spent countless hours negotiating with the council on the lease or a rent review, submitting accounts to Companies House, sometimes dealing with a more troublesome sub-tenant, name no names, and also producing tax returns, a whole load of work that went on behind the scenes, which most of us didn't know he was doing. But most importantly, he was really well liked. He was liked for his wit and his joviality, and he made a huge contribution to the fun on a Thursday night at the club. Sadly, he died in 2019, and we sorely miss him. But I am delighted to say that another club legend, and herself a vice president, is here to dedicate this boat to Mike Taylor. Sue.
Unlike Mike, of course, I don't have much to say, but he would have had a lot to say. And I do remember that I particularly remember the times that he was at home doing all the financially things behind the scenes. But it was all good-natured and it was fine. So I'd be pleased to dedicate this to Mike, and he would be very proud, I know.
Thank you very much. Go forward, Lachlan.
Well done. Well done.
Okay, this boat's being named after a particular dedicated athlete. He was very determined, very regular with his training. You could guarantee that he'd be down on Christmas Day and Boxing Day to train. He's sorely missed in other areas of the river as well, down at the school's boathouse. I know he's started lots of young people off on their rowing careers, and he was particularly good at cajoling the youngsters to get the best commitment out of them. But in normal Deirdre style, I'm now going to run. Over to Sharon.
Deirdre was a great member at Star Club, and was, I think if you cut him in half, he'd have Star Club written through the middle of him. He died in 2017 after a massive fight against cancer. I think one word for me to describe him would be honest, and sometimes he wound people up the wrong way, but he was honest through and through. So hopefully the people that are going to row in this double scull are going to be honest to themselves as athletes and push on and make Star Club proud. So would you like to
Pull the string.
pull the string? Emily Piggott, gave Mick this book before he passed away. And if anybody wants to borrow it, it's about being honest and true to yourself. If any of the youngsters want to borrow it, you know, you're more than welcome. Yeah, so it's from Emily Piggott, who's a GB rower, who Mick started off, and hopefully might inspire somebody. There we go. Ready to drop. Thank you. Dizzy. Thank you.
Proud. Oh, Liz Appleton. She learned to row at Cambridge, coached by the man she would eventually marry. Joined Star on setting in Bedford in 1985, although her husband went down to the other place. It's all right, he's here now. In a novice 4, she won her first trophy at Ironbridge in 1986. Coached by John Singfield, Lynn Parsons and Alan Johnson. Women's captain in 87, 88. Member of the crew that won the Senior B trophy at the 1988 Women's Head of the River. Being placed 11th overall from an entry of over 100 ladies crew. Long-term partner of Anne-Marie King in both a pair and a double. Her early involvement in club organisation involved being Kit's monitor. I don't know what that is, but apparently she did it. Helping to organise and manage the awards dinner each year, as well as being involved in drafting the club's current constitution. More recently, as club secretary, she's helped keep our growing club on an even keel. All this while caring for both Mark and their 2 children. A real record of involvement worthy of the honour of having one of our fleet named for her.
Thank you everybody. When I joined Star Club in 1985, I couldn't have imagined that Star Club would be naming a boat for me, and the club could do me no greater honour than this, I think. It is such a privilege. I hope that everybody who trains in this boat will enjoy training in it, get great pleasure from sculling and be very successful. So I'd like to name this boat, oops, I'll just wreck it with my handbag while I'm doing that. She's called Lizzie.
Won't sing.
Morning everybody. I'm sorry, but I can't remember everything I write, and I write a lot. So here I am, I'm going to read the stuff from my friend Peter Kennedy. I'm very pleased to introduce Vice President, fellow member, fellow founder member, Peter Kennedy, who's going to be christened in this boat. And really to welcome his family and friends who are here on this special occasion. Peter Kennedy came to Bedford from Stratford-on-Avon in 1956 at the invitation of the Ministry of Labour and National Service. They needed him to do his national service at RAF Cardington to pay the officers' expenses. They didn't have any experts able to do that. That's true, Peter?
Yes, yes.
However, as an experienced oarsman, Peter joined RAF Cardington Rowing Club and raced for them on the Tideway in the head of the river and Henley Royal Regatta and many other top-level rowing events over the period that he was there for 2 years. 2 years we had to do 10 and 6pence postal order, rail ticket. They got us cheap, didn't they?
I did.
Especially notable is the fact that he rowed in the 1958 RAF Cardington 8, which was so fast that it was invited to compete for selection for England in the Empire Games in '58 in Lake Padarn in North Wales. I mention that because I happen to be Welsh and I was there at the time. But he wasn't, unfortunately. After his national service, in common with many other founder members, Peter decided to remain in Bedford, and he got a job, married, and settled down to normal civilian life. Then during 1960, the founder members that remained in Bedford, there were quite a few of them, joined together with Peter to found a new civilian rowing club using the disbanded RAF Cardigan Rowing Club boathouse and equipment, which was down there. The new club was, of course, Star Club, and was based upon RAF Cardington and RAF Henlow oarsmen. Peter was its first secretary and later treasurer for a number of years, then vice captain to Mike Edwards in 1963. Peter actually rowed with me in the first ever Star Club crew to compete in the Tideway Head of the River in 1961. And we started 266th, right at the back of the field, and we finished 39th. Good row. Yeah. And then competed successfully in 8s, 4s for Star Club up to the mid-60s, when most of the RAF oarsmen retired from rowing. I carried on in the RAF for a year. So I was pretty unexpected.
You were. You're older than me.
The remaining founding members, including Peter, who continued to provide voluntary support for the club operations after retiring, were then appointed vice presidents. Peter's professional expertise lay in accountancy, and so he continued his voluntary support for Star Club on financial matters and auditing of club accounts. When in the early 80s, the planned demolition of our boathouse down there forced the development and funding of this new boathouse, Peter became director and company secretary of the Star Club Bedford Limited, the company that was formed to oversee this project. That period included the construction of the new boathouse and some years beyond it while we all settled in. A very traumatic time for the club. Peter, as a founder member and vice president, has continued to support and contribute to the club operations and has always been available to give advice during some very difficult financial situations that the club has been through, as you can imagine, over the years, notably with his knowledge of VAT matters, which
Yes.
we're tattooed with it, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Right. And so really, the management and members now of Star Club now wish to thank Peter for his lifelong support of the club by inviting him to christen this boat. Okay? So I'm delighted now to invite Peter to come forward and do the honour. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you for your kind words. Back in the dim and distant past, when I was still competing, every regatta used to have an event for open pairs. It was raced in committee boats, which were wooden, clinker built, had a cox, and were as heavy as you can imagine. They were the nearest thing to torture on water that you could find. We would have been delighted to row in craft like these, and I hope that whoever rows in this boat afterwards will take great pleasure from it and be extremely lucky. Thank you. So I'm very honoured to name this boat after me, Peter Kennedy.
Here's the name. There it is.
Have I got it
Both
right?
sides,
Yeah.
both sides.
There we go. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Morning, Chrissy. Chrissy Boggis, what can one say? She followed Lisa down to Star Club around 7 years ago, and she burst onto our scene. Lisa felt she needed something to do following their move from Suffolk. In addition to coxing, she's learned to scull and row, and I'm sure this all helps to keep her looking so young. On the other side, she's ready, wherever possible, to provide help, advice and support to just anyone. She involves herself in supporting club occasions and functions. Evidence for this you'll see upstairs when you go to the club room. Typically, in my own case, she recently provided some really helpful exercises to ease some lower back pain, typical of the lady. She's always keen to maintain and demonstrate good behaviour, and she's not slow to remind members of their duties and responsibilities. There are few, if any, areas of the club activity which have not benefited from her presence. A lovely person, an invaluable club member, and a great credit to her husband and daughter.
Thank you, Bob, for those lovely words.
Now it's up to you.
Well, I don't know what to say. I'm absolutely honoured to have this boat named after me. So I'm going to keep it very short. Chrissy B. It's going to be a very lucky boat.
My second sheet. Thank God there's no more. I'm very pleased to introduce Vice President Alan Johnson, who is going to be christening this boat. Alan joined the club at the age of 16 in the late 60s, and at the time I was captain. I remember it well. I'm happy to confess that I taught him to row, and in spite of that, he did pretty well rowing and sculling, didn't you?
Well, I've had success in both, yes.
Right. More than that, as time went by, he became heavily involved for a number of years in club management. First as bar treasurer for a long period of time, and then I think club treasurer, but I can't remember much about that.
No, Untitled Club Treasurer.
Okay. I'm learning as I'm going along with this. I know that one of his proudest moments, rowing-wise, and achievements, came from winning novice sculls at St Ives Regatta.
Yes!
What a brilliant effort that was. Luckily for him, I was the starter of that race.
Yes!
And but winning it was certainly nothing to do with me. I did him no favours. I think after that race, he hasn't sculled since. Am I right?
I hate sculling.
That's right.
Undefeated, I will remain.
Encouraging people to take up rowing has always been a major part of Alan's contribution to the club. And in his early days, he noticed a tall, skinny young lad idly kicking a football against somebody's garage in his home village. Alan suggested that he might enjoy learning to row instead. And for that lad took up Alan's invitation, and that is how the club and British Rowing gained Peter Mulcairns. Now, one of the finest things you've ever done for this club, Peter Mulcairns.
Oh, I'm really pleased he achieved what he achieved.
Alan's involvement and dedication to the club has led to him being elected captain in 1986. He was then captain for 2 years. Most people can only suffer 1 year. I suffered 3. He suffered 2, which is pretty good. And overseeing the traumatic change from moving from that boathouse to this one, and it was traumatic, I can tell you. 2 years, and overseeing that. That's it. Alan was appointed vice president in 1994 in recognition of his voluntary work and dedication to the club. However, his contribution has never really stopped. His long periods of years, and until recently, he's been the organiser of the mammoth task of manning the club heads of rivers and regattas, and also a bit of the part of Bedford Regatta organisation. He did a marvellous job for many years, up till very recently. At the present time, his main and current involvement is, and has been for about the last 10 years, the recruitment of persons of all ages to his introductory rowing programmes. This involves the management of coaches who are all motivated by Alan's drive to get more people into rowing. We have many members here today who came to the club and the sport of rowing because of his initiative and Alan's dedication to this activity. The number of persons who have been introduced to rowing by Alan numbers the hundreds. It's really a marvellous job. Really? Absolutely, yeah. Alan is one of the most loyal and dedicated members of this club, and his voluntary contribution to its success over many years is now being recognised by Star Club and its members. Without more ado, and in recognition of the countless hours Alan has put in the Star Club, I now invite him to come and christen this boat. Well done, Alan.
Thank you, Lynn, for those kind words and the nostalgia that you brought with it. Yes, 16 years old, found my way into the family, which is Star Club, and I've never had any thoughts about leaving it, to be honest with you. Such is the atmosphere of this club. Long may it prosper. Yes, I never achieved top level rowing, but I did win my novice sculls at first attempt. I'm undefeated. That's the way it's going to stay. As I've already said, I hate rowing. I hate sculling. Give me sweep or rowing any day. So I wish everybody that rows in this boat the best of luck with their sculling, and I hope they enjoy it far, far more than I do, or I have in the past. And let's christen the boat Alan Johnson. There you go. Thanks very much.
This one's been a long time coming. I think, Rita, you and I started talking about buying the boat with your generous donation early 2020. Well, Mike's donation back in early 2020. And the boat's been with us for a few months, but this is the first opportunity to be able to name it. Absolutely. So we're delighted. Shame about the weather, but there's nothing much we can do about that. This is an important story, I think, for lots of people who are here today. It's also a sad story, and I think it's important people understand where the name comes from and what it means to us all. So this boat is named after Suzanne Edwards. Suzanne was the eldest child of Mike and Rita, and she was tragically killed in a road accident back in 1980, and she was just 20 years old. And that's a very sad story, and a lot of people here will remember those times, and of course that stays with the family. But I think because we remember those people, they continue to live with us. And I think it's important that the people that are at the club today understand that the people that were here before had their day and they were no different to the people that are here now. So we were all juniors once, and it doesn't seem very long ago that we were competing in regattas and winning novice pots. And time flies past, but juniors yesterday and young people yesterday are no different to young people today, apart from that elapse of time. And I think the community of the club and the fact that we all pitch in together, whether we're old, young, good, bad, indifferent, whether we love sculling, rowing, whether we don't care about sculling, rowing, but we like a cup of coffee, what brings this club together. And I'm delighted to kind of have today as that opportunity to bring people back in who don't get to spend so much time at the club anymore, but are really important and have helped us to get where we are today. So thanks for coming. I hope you, despite the weather, have a lovely day. And this is a great occasion. So thank you everybody for the 7 that have gone before and for this one in particular. And we'll enjoy rowing in the boat. And if you'd like to pull the boat between you, and we're going to name this boat Suzanne, in honour of, or Susie Edwards. Susie or Suzanne, bit of both. So Susie or Suzanne Edwards, and it's a Janasek brand new double or coxless pair, and it was being kindly funded by Mike and Rita. So thank you very much. Would you like to pull the ribbon?
If I can step forward.
If you can reach it.
Suzanne. Didn't manage to get any other rowers. Susie used to come here as a toddler when it was a different club. Today we have our great-granddaughter here, which is really nice.
Yeah, indeed.
Thank you, baby.
Not at all. Thank you very much.
Yeah. What can I do with this?
Would you like a glass of champagne? We've got one over there.
I've had one. I'm all right, certainly, at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's the end of the boat naming ceremony. I'm going to say a few quick thank yous, so bear with me for another 30 seconds. Thank you to everybody that's taken part in the ceremony today, whether that's because you've been doing one of the speeches or you've been unveiling one of the boats in your honour or the honour of your family. I hope you've enjoyed it and you get some satisfaction from that. I'd like to say a special thank you to David Kempsall, where he's gone. Normally too big to miss. There he is. So David's our outgoing captain. He finished being captain about 12 hours ago, strictly. And he was our captain through a difficult year with COVID. But we've had a very successful year under Dave, and I want to say thank you very much to him for building the club over that period. I think somewhat unusually we have up to 4 crews still going to Henley. Is it still 4? So we have a Thames Cup 8, which is largely older men and a few misfits, so that's interesting. We have a Y-fold 4, and we have a ladies 8 in a new event, which is a kind of a club 8 event, is that right?
Yep, women's club 8.
And 1 junior quad or 2 junior quads? And 1 junior quad. So 4 boats to Henley is a good return for us to the Henley scene, and we have our fingers crossed we'll have some success there. And I'd just like to say again, thank you to Dave for a very successful year in terms of putting us back on the map in terms of senior rowing. So we had good years in juniors and good years in masters, and we had that gap in the middle, and Dave's really helped us fill that gap and put us back where we think we belong. I'd also like to say thank you very much to a number of people who are dotted around who have helped organise today. The only thing we couldn't organise was the weather, but I think everything else has been covered, and there's a lot of hard work that goes on in the background. So there's people standing upstairs, Anne and Danny, that I can see that have done lots of things inside the club in terms of catering, helping clean the clubhouse up, put our new blades up, bit of bunting, and I hope you think it looks like it's had a good spring clean and is appropriate for today. Thank you very much to Chrissy, Liz, and of course to my long-suffering wife Caroline, wherever she is, who's spent the last 24 hours helping varnish blades at midnight and print off pages of paper that otherwise I would be nowhere near ready for this ceremony. So thank you very much to everybody else who's taken part in that. But we have a new captain from today, so in case you haven't heard, we have a lady captain for next year, so that's a good thing. Rachel Kilwar is one of our senior lady oarsmen, and she'll be racing Henley, and it's good to get another senior involved in taking the club forward, and we look forward to working with her. So if she were here today, I'd have asked her to introduce herself, but next time you're down, make sure you do. And then thank you everybody else for coming and helping out, and just for turning up and being part of Star Club. Because I think, for me, the big difference between this place and other rowing clubs that perhaps aren't too far away is that we have a community and we have a facility, and it's people on the river and off the river, and I think we have a real sense of momentum, both in the competitive side of the club but also the social side of the club. So I hope that when you come here, you all get something out of it, whatever that means to you, whether that means winning on the water, whether it means getting exercise in the water, or whether it means coming to talk to your friends. We're trying to cater for that broad base, and the other important thing we're trying to do going forward is build that inclusion in the community. So we have a new appointment starting in the middle of August. We have a director of rowing, which is a slightly bigger role than the junior coaches we've had before, and we're hopeful that that director of rowing, which is Jason Foster, I don't think Jason's here, it's probably too wet for him, but Jason Foster, of course, many of you will know from the past, is going to be working with us full time to both coach the junior and expand the junior side, do a bit of work with the bottom end of the senior in terms of bottom end age as opposed to ability, so make sure we continue that progression in the senior side of things, but also to reach out to the rest of the community that walk past here and don't know anything about rowing and never get the opportunity to try. So we're very much trying to kind of push the inclusion aspect of the club and make it a more diverse and equal opportunities facility for the community. So we're working hard on that. We've got some exciting partnerships and things we're developing for next year, and I hope you'll all celebrate that and help us support taking the club forward and making it even better and more successful going forward. So that's enough. You've all soaked to the skin, sorry. But there is a free lunch over there and there's free drinks upstairs, unless you want something a bit stronger or tea and coffee, in which case it's still very reasonably priced. Thank you very much for coming and see you soon.
Thank you.
I know, it's just, I was getting